Hi students, our topic today is solving proportions. And a proportion is when you have two fractions that are set equal to each other. You may have a more complex fraction. You might have several terms in the fraction, but it's basically two fractions set equal to each other. That's what we call a proportion. I really like proportions because they're a great way to solve a lot of real world problems. So if you think of like a recipe, if I need 4 cups of flour to make 2 loaves of zucchini bread, how many cups of flour do I need to make 9 loaves of zucchini bread? That's not so easy. We're not just doubling it. But if you set it up as a proportion, you can easily solve that. Proportions solve lots of great everyday problems. So let's think of proportions in 3 steps. The first thing we want to do is something called cross multiply. And how I want you to think of that is think of your fraction as A over B equals C over D. Think of the fraction that way. What you're going to do is multiply A times D, and that will be equal to B times C. Now, the second step will be to distribute. That's not always necessary, but if it is, you'll need to do that. And the third step will be to use our toolbox of algebra skills to solve. And we need to do that. Okay, let's get started with our first example. And it's a rather easy one. We have 4/3 equals x divided by 6. So 3 times x equals 4 times 6. 3x equals 24. Divide both sides by 3, and x equals 8. Seem pretty easy? Well, let's try one that's a little bit harder. When you see two terms, remember terms are separated by addition and subtraction. You see two terms in the denominator. So I want you to put parentheses around them. Let's group those terms. That gives us 2 times the quantity of n plus 5 equals 10 times 4. We're following this formula right here. A times D, let me get a different color. Okay, A times D equals B times C. And that's what we've done here, and that's what we've done here. So first we need to distribute, which means to multiply through the terms within the grouping symbols, in this case, parentheses. So that would give us 2n plus 10 equals 40. We subtract 10 from both sides, which leaves us with 2n equals 30. We divide both sides by 2, and n equals 15. Let's take a look at number 3. Again, let's use grouping symbols. So we have 2y equals 5 times the quantity of y minus 3, and we will distribute, which means to multiply through. So 2y equals 5y minus 15. So our next step, I think what I'm going to do is subtract 5y from both sides. So minus 5y minus 5y. We're going to have negative y over here. We're going to have negative 3y equals negative 15. So now we will divide. Let's change a color so we can show our steps. We'll divide both sides of this equation by negative 3. Remember, a negative divided by a negative is positive, so y equals 5. Okay, now we're distributing in both this numerator and denominator. So let's start with, oops, I don't know what that was. Let's start with 5 times the quantity of 2k minus 3 equals 3 times the quantity of k plus 9. When we distribute, we have 10k minus 15 equals 3k plus 27. And I think what I'll do is subtract 3k from each side to move the k's over to the left side of the equation. I'll change my color so I can show our steps. So now we have 7k minus 15 equals 27. Let's go ahead and add 15 to each side of the equation, which gives us 7k equals 42. We'll divide both sides by 7, and k equals 6. So try the rest of them yourself, and let's see how you do. We have, looks like 12 problems. So go ahead and try those and then come back and we'll see how you did. Pause the video, try them on your own first. Okay, students, I hope you really did try those on your own, and I'll work them now. So we're going to group the x plus 10 so that we have 8x, 8 times x, 8x equals 3 times the quantity of x plus 10. That would give us 8x equals 3x plus 30. I think I'll subtract 3x from each side. And that will give me 5x equals 30. When I divide both sides by 5, x equals 6. Now, this is one of our more challenging ones. We'll group these terms together, and we'll have 3 times the quantity of p plus 7 equals 6 times the quantity of p plus 2. So let's see, let's distribute through. 3p plus 21 equals 6p plus 12. I'm going to move the p's over to the right this time. I'm going to move the smaller variable over to the larger. That leaves us with 21 equals 3p plus 12. I'll subtract 12 from both sides. And that gives me 9 equals 3p. If I divide both sides by 3, p equals 3. Number 3, I have 3w, I'll go this way first, it doesn't matter. 3w equals 6 times the quantity of w minus 2. After I distribute, I have 3w equals 6w minus 12. I'm going to move the 6w to the left, which would give me negative 3w equals negative 12. Then I'll divide both sides by negative 3 because whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. And w equals positive 4 because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. Okay, now we have 6 times the quantity of n minus 7 equals 9 times the quantity of n minus 4. After we distribute, we have 6n minus 42 equals 9n minus 36. And I'm going to move the 6 n's to the left. And that will leave me with negative 42 equals 3n minus 36. I will add 36 to both sides. Which will leave me with negative 6 equals 3n. Divide both sides by positive 3. And n equals negative 2. Let's go on to the next problem. I really hope, students, you're trying these on your own before you watch me do them. Challenge yourself a little bit. This practice is really good for you. So we're going to have 3a plus 1 equals 2a minus 3. And when we distribute, 3a plus 3 equals 2a minus 6. And I'm going to move, I've decided I'm going to move the smaller number, the 2a, over to the left. So I have no variables on the right. So 3 minus 2 is 1. We don't generally write the 1. That's an invisible 1 there. So I've got a plus 3 equals negative 6. And now I need to subtract 3 from both sides. That means that a equals, it's not a very good looking a. Let me see if I can do better. A equals negative 9. And number 6, last problem on this page, we have 5 times the quantity of f plus 2 equals 3 times 25. So when we distribute, that would be 5f plus 10 equals 75. Let's go ahead and subtract 10 from both sides of the equation. That will give me 5f equals 65. And now I'll divide both sides of the equation by 5. And f equals 13. Okay, ready to go on to the next page? 6 more problems. Okay, we've got 6 times the quantity of m minus 9 equals 8 times the quantity of m minus 8. So this on the left we have 6m minus 54 equals 8m minus 64. I think I'll start by subtracting 6m from both sides. Maybe I'll change the color so we can show our steps a little bit. So on the left side, I have negative 54 equals 2m minus 64. And now I will add 64 to each side. And on the left side, that will give me 10 equals 2m. I'll divide both sides by 2. And m equals 5 or 5 equals m. Either way you write it, it's correct. Now, you've got r in both denominators, a variable in both denominators. So I'm going to group the r plus 4 just for clarity. So first I have 2 times r equals 4 times the quantity of r plus 4. So 2 times r is 2r equals 4 times r is 4r. 4 times 4, positive 4, is 16. So I'm going to subtract 4r from both sides. Let's change our color so we can show our steps. And on the left side, I have negative 2r equals 16. Now I'll divide both sides by 2, negative 2. Let's not forget that negative. And r equals negative 8. Okay, number 9. Let's group these two terms together in the numerator and denominator. And let's write it out. Sorry about the phone, guys. Let's get back to the math, much more important. So let's multiply 5 times the quantity of v minus 2 and set that equal to 2 times the quantity of v minus 8. And let's keep it all straight. So that gives us 5v minus 10 on the left side, 2v minus 16 on the right side. I think I'll move this 2v so I have variables only on the left side. And that gives us 3v minus 10 equals negative 16. I will add 10 to both sides for 3v equals negative 6. And I will divide both sides by 3. A negative divided by a positive is a negative, so v equals negative 2. Now we'll group those terms and those denominators together. And we'll start out, we will multiply 6 times the quantity of k minus 6 and set that equal to 8 times the quantity of k minus 1. When we distribute, we have 6k minus 36 equal to, let's get that minus sign correctly, equal to 8k minus 8. I'm going to subtract 6k from each side. And that leaves me with negative 36 equals 2k minus 8. I will add 8 to each side. And that leaves me with negative 28 equals 2k. I will divide both sides by 2, which leaves me with negative 14 equals k. And I told you guys I always try to be in the habit. It's not a requirement, but I like to write my variables on the left. K equals negative 14. Last 2 problems. Are we ready? I'm sorry, last 4 problems. I thought there were 12. 14, 15, 16. We'll do them all. Okay. Number 11. Let's group these terms. So we'll start out with 4 times the quantity of y minus 7 equals 3 times the quantity of y minus 9. When we distribute, 4y minus 28 equals 3y minus 27. And I'll subtract 3y from each side. And we will have 1y, we just call that y, minus 28 equals negative 27. Add 28 to each side. And y equals 1. Let's group these numerator terms. And we will start with 4 times the quantity of h minus 6 equals 9 times the quantity of h plus 9. After we distribute, we will have 4h minus 24 equals 9h plus 81. I'm going to move 4h by subtracting from both sides. And that leaves us with a negative 24 on the left equals 5h plus 81. Let's subtract 81 from each side. We have a large negative number here. And we will have negative 105 equals 5h. But then when we divide both sides by 5, this number will get smaller, and h will equal negative 21. Let's group the r plus 10 in the numerator, and I'll start out with 4 times r, which will be 4r, equals 2 times the quantity of r plus 10. That gives me 4r equals 2r plus 20. I'm going to subtract 2r from each side of the equation. And that will give me 2r on the left equals 20. Divide both sides of the equation by 2, and r equals 10. Let's group the terms in this denominator on the left and on the right. And we will start with, I think I'll start with 7 times the quantity of x minus 6 equals 3 times the quantity of 2x minus 8, a little more complex. That will give us 7x minus 42. 7 times x and 7 times negative 6 equals 6x minus 24. I'm going to move 6x. 7 minus 6 is 1x. That's an invisible 1 there. X minus 42 equals negative 24. I'm going to add 42 to each side of the equation. And I'm left with x equals 18. Last 2 problems. Let's group those terms in the denominator first. 2 times the quantity of 4u plus 9 equals 3 times the quantity of 3u plus 7. So after we distribute, 8u plus 18 equals 9u plus 21. I'm going to subtract 8u from each side of the equation. And we're left with 18 equals u, it's just one u, that's an invisible u, plus 21. I will subtract 21 from each side of the equation, and I will have negative 3 equals u, and I like to write it this way. U equals negative 3. This is really good practice for the distributive property. Okay, last problem. You've worked very hard today. Super proud of you. 10 times the quantity of 2x minus 1 equals 5 times the quantity of 3x plus 1. So after we distribute, we have 20x minus 10 equals 15x plus 5. And I'm going to go ahead and subtract 15x from each side. And that leaves us with, let's change a color. There we go. That leaves us with 5x equals, oops, I almost forgot my 10. Good thing it's the last problem. I think I'm getting tired. Okay. 5x minus 10 equals 5. Now I will add 10 to both sides of this equation, which gives me 5x equals 15. I will divide both sides by 5, and I have x equals 3. So if you're having trouble getting to some of these answers, I want you to try to think about exactly where your errors are. Do you need a little more help with your positives and negatives? Do you need a little more help maybe with multiplying? Maybe that's where you need some help. I want you to think about that. So work hard. Keep trying these. Try the homework ones. And keep up the really good work because you're working really hard in algebra. I know you'll get it if you practice.